And now there's even more evidence about the flimsiness of the wet market theory. And so Margaret Brennan says this. She says, why is it so efficient? And she's talking about COVID-19. Why is it so efficient? I've heard so many virologists point to that it was uniquely adapted to be just horrible in the human body. How did it get that efficient? And Fauci says, well, it evolves in animals. It evolves in humans. And it could just, sometimes viruses jump into humans and they take off and run away. Sometimes viruses just jump, man. Like, have you ever seen a virus play basketball? Like, sometimes I don't think they're going to reach the rim, and sometimes they just fucking jump and 360 LeBron that shit right through the net. So I don't know, man. Sometimes viruses just fucking jump and run away. Is that racist that Fauci is saying that viruses can jump high? I feel like he's giving a racial association to this virus being able to jump. He's basically saying that because this virus can jump high, they were able to escape. And so, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I think when I think of people that are jumping high and people that are running away from the cops, I clearly think Fauci is trying to dunk on black people here. I think that this is an extremely racist interpretation of the virus. That's clearly what Fauci was thinking here. He wasn't thinking about answering the question that Margaret Brennan just asked him. He immediately, Fauci switched, and he decided to, how can I dog whistle the fact that I don't like black people through describing that the virus can jump high and run away. And also, those are two great qualities. Like, I'd love to be able to jump high. I'd love to be able to run fast. Those are two things that I don't have. And, shout out to the people that can do that of all races. But I digress off of that rant that may or may not have made sense. So Fauci goes on to say, he says the viruses jump into humans and they take off and run right away. Margaret Brennan then says, but we don't know what went between the bat and the human. We don't know what went on between the bat and the human. There was something in between, ? Fauci says it was very likely in a host. What the Chinese did, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. But the people who were reporting it, who investigated what they did, is they cleaned out the markets as soon as it turned out that it was clear that there were clusters coming from the market. Which, in typical fashion, I think trying to make sure that things don't get pointed to them, they probably got rid of the animals that were the intermediary hosts there. So, Fauci's theory is that the virus made its way to a wet market. So a bat bit a pangolin in Laos and then traveled 1,000 miles. And then someone, killed it or captured it and put it in the wet market. And people started to get sick. Or this would be even before people started to get sick. This would be before COVID-19 was spreading. So his theory is that the bat bit a pangolin. The pangolin flew, or I don't know if pangolins fly, but somehow it got into the supply at the wet market. And then people started saying, oh shit, like we should get rid of these intermediary hosts. Like the people at a market, basically a grocery store in Wuhan, a pop-up market, have this intense knowledge of virology where they start putting together the dots on the few cases that aren't even public yet. And they go, guys, I think this is turning into a breeding ground of COVID-19, SARS-2, and we should definitely start to hide the evidence because there's going to be a pandemic in about 3 months and it's going to come back to us. And the guy sitting next to him is like, what the fuck are you talking about? I sell bats at a market. I don't know how viruses work. But I trust your knowledge, talking to me how viruses work. So, I'm going to get rid of all the animals on my animal stand. I'm going to give up the income of the few dollars I was going to make this week, trying to feed my family in Wuhan, all because you have this theory that the intermediary hosts are here. Thanks, John, for telling me this. And it's like two guys in a wet market, and they start to spread rumors around that, hey, we should start to get rid of these fucking bats, dude. Like, I think SARS-2, I think SARS-V2 COVID-19 is going to cause some future immunodeficiencies in the global population. And based on my knowledge of selling these live exotic animals in this market, I entirely suspect that people will trace this back to us, and we should definitely get rid of this stuff in the market. And so I don't know. the fact that there's some coordinated effort to get rid of the bats and the animals in that market when there hasn't been any direct link to the origin of the virus starting there. Like, how are people going to realize that? And what if people from the lab in Wuhan just came and started snatching animals up from the market? Wouldn't people be like, what the fuck is happening here? But he goes on to say they probably got rid of the animals that were the intermediary hosts, and that's the reason why it's very important to continue to get the cooperation of the Chinese in allowing surveillance of the animals that ultimately go into the wet markets, the civet cats, the raccoon dogs, and all the other things that clearly the virus is a very promiscuous virus in the sense that it can infect animals. So this virus is horny as fuck, and it is a very horny virus. This virus spreads quickly. It spreads rapidly. People that, aren't even horny, that are, horny symptomatic, can spread this because the virus is that horny to other people. And so they don't even know. And they want to get rid of the animals in the markets. Animals can infect the humans. He goes on to say there are animals out there, very big cats. There are animals in the environment that are getting infected with SARS-CoV-2. It's very highly infective. As long as you have the receptor for the virus, it'll infect you. So that's what makes it. It's capable of binding so well to the receptors in the body. And then Margaret Brennan goes on to say, but Beijing acknowledges now that they don't think it originated in the market. And Dr. Fauci just goes, shh, I'm science. Well, Fauci says, it may not have originated in the market, but it certainly could have. I mean, I don't think that they admitted that it didn't originate in the market. I had to read that sentence 6 times before I knew what he was saying. I don't think that they admitted that it didn't originate in the not on market. That's not COVID-2, but is not, and that is not a bat that does not have not COVID. And I think they're saying they don't know how it originated. And one thing I know is that people who use double negatives are guilty. I have never known the truth in my life and then said it as a double negative. No one's. If I went for a walk this morning, and someone said, "Hey, did you go for a walk?" and I wanted to tell the truth, I wouldn't say, "Well, I didn't not go for a walk." And the person would be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't not go for a walk. That's not today, this morning, but I could have not gone for, like, every time." Maybe other people feel this too. Every time I want to lie, there's always a doubt. I'm like, how can I say this confusingly so that by the time this person figures out exactly what I said, I'll be gone, or I can, hang up, or just be like, laugh awkwardly and then transition to the next thing. So whenever I'm like, I'm going to lie right now, I'm just like, how can I say this in the most confusing way possible? How did the virus, doesn't Beijing think that the virus didn't originate in the market? Well, I mean, what's Beijing? What is not Beijing. Is Beijing not a city that could possibly be a place where COVID didn't not originate? I mean, it didn't not originate in the market, but a bat may have not unbit a penguin that didn't not identify as a trans unicorn star. And based on what I don't not know, I am not science. And here's what I think. There's a lot of evidence out there, which I'm going to get into shortly, some new documents that were leaked in China. This is like, with all the evidence, this is like catching someone that murdered, that shot someone in the face. If you catch someone who mugged another human being and shot that person in the face, and you say, hey, we have all the evidence, you know, there's it's on video. We think, you know, we think it's this guy. We got him, you know, dead to rights. We got him. We literally have the smoking gun. And then there's a conversation between two police officers, and then it'd be like if the other police officer's like, well, I mean, we saw the murder, we saw the gun go off, we saw the bullet enter the person's forehead and shatter into a million pieces and destroy their brain. But here's what didn't happen. I don't think that guy admitted that the bullet originated in his gun. I mean, we have him on camera, but if you think about it, he didn't actually admit that it came from his gun. I mean, he didn't not say it did. I mean, it could have, or it couldn't have, but this guy didn't tell us that it originated from his gun. So even though we have all the evidence, I mean, they didn't say it did, so it could have or it couldn't have. And it's like, bro, you're literally a scientist. If you say you are science, that's what evidence is for. We don't need people to admit things. You know, he says, I don't think that they admitted it didn't originate in the market. Do you expect people in the market or people working in the lab to just tell you, yeah, I did it? Like, there would be no reason for lawyers. There would be no reason for judges. There'd be no reason for, you know, prosecutors, defense, jury. Like, if the ultimate evidence that you were waiting for was for the person involved to admit that they did it, no one would ever be found guilty. And every single person would be innocent, because that's completely within the perpetrator's control. You can either admit you're doing something or not admit you're doing something, but that has no fucking impact on what's actually true and what's actually happened and the evidence that gathered. You still have to make a decision and say, okay, you know, even though people involved in China didn't admit it originated in the virus or weren't clear on it, the evidence suggests that it did. And there's another thing going on here that's kind of like people, that goes into people saying things in a convoluted fashion, kind of like saying, you know, like adding in double negatives to throw people off. There's something I've noticed, and I know because I've done this myself, especially to my parents when I was younger. When someone knows that there's evidence in their favor, when someone knows that they're right, when someone just absolutely knows they're correct, the evidence is in their favor, they go out of their way to show you how in control and dominant of the facts they are, and how tightly held their grasp is on the situation. And they're like, hey, you know, I know you think this, but this is what happened. I got it. You know, babe, like I didn't fuck that chick. Like, I swear I was at a conference meeting and this is what happened. You know, I have an explanation for this. This is what happened. You're going to be so embarrassed because I have the alibi. I have the receipts. People are so quick to remind you of their receipts when they know that they're right and they know that the evidence is on their side. But there's also the other side of it where when people know they're wrong, when people know that the evidence is not on their side, they will do this very cringy, forced ignorance. Like if your wife or girlfriend, whatever, catches you cheating, and they're like, I found this text on your phone, and it was this girl's name that this number I didn't recognize was asking you to meet up, and it was yesterday, and I just want to know what happened there. And the guy that knows when he's wrong will be like, oh well, I mean, that it was a. I mean, do you even know that's a text? Like, it's words on my phone. It's showing up in blue, but I mean, what are texts really? I mean, that could have come from anyone. My phone could have been on the Bluetooth was on, and anyone can airdrop a message or a picture or photo to my phone. I mean, babe, I don't even know if this is a phone. What are we in a simulation? Like people when they know they're wrong will just make up the wildest shit. Like it's like, I don't know how anything works anymore because I'm wrong, and I'm just trying to confuse you about the structures that we all agree are true. And so when Fauci, he's no doubt seeing all this evidence that it came from the lab, and confronted with the fact that it probably did. And he's presented with this evidence in the interview on CBS, and he's just like, well, I mean, like, how does evidence work really? I mean, there's all this stuff. I mean, DNA sequencing points to a lab, but what is DNA? Like, can we even trust that? Like, and plus they didn't admit it, like when people are wrong, isn't that something they do? They usually admit it, and they didn't say that they didn't do it. So, and it's like all this kind of performative ignorance when the evidence is stacked against you. And I've done it. I mean, I've done this with my parents many times when I was younger. If I got caught doing something, I remember I put a stink bomb in my friend's mailbox one time. I rode my bike with a stink bomb that exploded in my friend's mailbox, and it got colored purple on the inside. And so, I didn't know that. I thought it would just like I don't know exactly what I thought was going to happen, but I saw a stink bomb, and then it would go off and make their mailbox smell, and they'd open it and it'd smell like farts or something. And so I got a call, or my mom got a call from my friend's mom, Matt's mom. And she said, do you know anything about a stink bomb or smoke bomb going off? Like, did Zachary, has he been out of the house today? Like, we're trying to figure out who, and I rode over with a couple of friends too. It's just like a joke. We were getting one of my friends back for something. And I put it into the mailbox, and my mom asked me about it, and she said, did you put some sort of smoking stink bomb device in your friend's mailbox? And I was like, what? What, Mom? She's like, yeah, their mailbox is purple. Like, the entire inside of the mailbox is purple. Some of their mail got destroyed. And I was like, well, I mean, maybe the mailbox, like maybe when the mailman slid in the mail, there was some sort of reaction with the friction. Like when the mail was sliding through the box, it could have like set off a reaction, like a chemical reaction with the paint. And my mom's just like, go to your room. Like, just stop. Like, you're done. You might, like, even if I threw a grenade in their mailbox and blew it up, I would have been like, maybe the mailman, like, I don't know. Something, like if he closed it too hard, maybe the mailbox exploded. Like, I don't know. We should go outside and test it out with our mailbox, And so when people know they've done shit wrong, they just pretend like they don't know how things like gravity and evidence and physics work. They're just like, I don't fucking know, dude. And there are these documents that were leaked in China. That's called on a website named express.co.uk. And the title of the article is COVID Lab Leak Theory Blows Wide Open. And it says, now questions surround how a bat-borne virus from Laos could have ended up sparking an outbreak in Wuhan, which is more than 1,000 miles away. Leaked emails between Scientific Research Foundation, EcoHealth Alliance, and U.S. government funders show viral samples were being actively collected from bats in Laos. These samples were then taken back to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for study. So the theory that, how could this bat-borne virus from Laos end up in Wuhan, that, it bit an animal and it ended up in the wet market and that's how it spread and just jumped to a human. There are emails between the scientists, the Research Foundation, EcoHealth Alliance, so involved directly with the lab in Wuhan, and U.S. government funders, which there's evidence to support that, Fauci might have known a little something about that. I don't know. I'm just talking in a high voice. Because I'm guilty. And they were collecting these samples 1,000 miles away in the lab. So these samples from the bats that people are like, how did they end up in Wuhan? People in the lab were going out and collecting them and bringing them back and then testing them out, doing gain of function research, all this shit in the Wuhan Institute of Virology for study. So it's like, are you still going to stick to your theory? Fauci, no doubt, saw this before he went on the CBS interview, and he's still like, no, guys, I think a bat molested a pangolin. I don't know. Just kind of like what, basically, he's playing like the unfunny version of Jon Stewart when he went on Colbert and just completely embarrassed anyone who was trying to make people feel like they were crazy for saying maybe the virus originated in a lab. Great segment, by the way. Search Jon Stewart if you haven't seen it already. It was all over. I'm sure you have. Jon Stewart, Colbert, COVID. So yeah,